Well, good morning, everyone. There's a story told about the Panovich Rav that he once was fundraising overseas for his yeshiva in Bnei Brak, and he came to this wealthy donor, and he said he needs money to build Judaism, Yiddishkeit in Israel, and the wealthy donor, who wasn't a religious Jew, said, I'll give you money on one condition. If you build a yeshiva where the children don't wear yarmulkes and don't wear payas and don't wear tzitzis. I don't like them looking too religious with the yarmulke and the payas and the tzitzis. If you build a yeshiva where students don't wear yarmulkes, payas, and tzitzis, I'll give you a lot of money. He said, no problem. He takes the check, he goes to Israel, and he opens up a girls' yeshiva. The opening of this week's parsha says that the Jewish people were asked to contribute for the building of the Mishkan. And I think this is the only time this was required. It says, V'yikchu li truma, and Rashi says, li, that the givers have to give it, li, for the sake of Hashem. Lishma. You know, when you go into a shul, a lot of times you see plaques. In the Bet HaMikdash, in the Mishkan, there was no plaques. Why? Because you couldn't give it for any ulterior motives. You had to give it for the sake of Hashem with pure intentions and motives, or else the contribution was not accepted. It's interesting. I mentioned yesterday that I met this doctor, Dr. Rick Hodis, who was working in Ethiopia. One of the things he told me is that over there there's Mother Teresa's orphanage that they help these poor children, and he says they have a policy, they don't fundraise. Why? Because they say we only want contributions of people who want to voluntarily give. If we have to ask them, it's not voluntary, we don't want their money. In the Mishkan, Lahavdil, it had to be purely given. We also find in yesterday's parsha that when it came to, in this week's parsha, that when it came to the building of the ark, it said that it was gold on the outside and gold on the inside. Now it's one thing to put gold on the outside, it's beautiful. But why would you put gold on the inside? Who sees the inside of the ark? And the rabbis say that the ark represents a Jew who learns Torah. That a Jew who learns Torah has to be gilded on the outside and gilded on the inside, which means you can't just radiate beauty in your behavior externally, but your internal character and integrity also has to be gold. Tocho kibaro, your inside has to reflect your outside. You can't be duplicitous, you can't be two-faced, you can't be superficially beautiful, but internally corrupt. And therefore, the Aron teaches you they have to be golden on the inside. As a matter of fact, the Talmud tells a famous story that when Rabbi Gamliel was the head of the academy in Babylonia, he had a special admission policy. He would only accept students who their inside was as refined and as beautiful as their outward appearance. The Talmud says when he was removed from the position of the head of the academy, a new rabbi took over, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, and he lowered the standard. He said, any student who wants to learn Torah, even if their inside is not as beautiful as their outside, they're not as refined in their character, I accept them. And the Talmud says they had to add hundreds of seats to the study hall because of the influx of students. The Talmud concludes that when Rabbi Gamliel heard this, how many new students attended the yeshiva, he felt very bad. That maybe he did the wrong thing by not allowing students whose inside wasn't like their outside to come in. So the Ger Rebbe, the Chidush Shirim, says, why did Rabbi Gamliel feel bad? He had a policy based on the Torah that your inside has to be as beautiful as your outside. So why did he feel bad when he heard that when Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah took over and lowered the standard and said any student who wants to learn Torah is accepted, and he saw that hundreds of new students attended, why did he feel bad? He knew that he could have had hundreds of more students. He didn't want those students in the first place. So Chidush Shirim says, this is the way you have to understand the Gemara. It's not that on day one he felt bad. Over the passage of time, he saw that many of the students that were accepted by Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, who initially their inside was not as beautiful as their outside, over the passage of time, with weeks and months and years of learning Torah, they transformed their inside to be as beautiful as their outside. And he realized, I should have accepted those students. I should not have judged them as where they're at. I should have realized that the power of Torah has the ability to elevate a person with time, to turn their inside to be as gilded and as golden as their outside. And that's why he regretted not accepting those students. And that's the lesson of Torah. The lesson of Torah is that the light of Torah has a very powerful effect to change a person. And a person should never say, well, I'm not cut out for it. I can never be a great Torah scholar. I can never be a pious, righteous person. Start studying Torah today. little by little, and eventually you never know how beautiful, how developed, how refined, how elevated your character, your personality, your conscience can become. And you can become beautiful, gold on the outside and gold on the inside. Tonight, millions and millions of people will be watching the Super Bowl. So just to tie it into a lesson we see in the Super Bowl, I mentioned this briefly yesterday, but one of the most valuable players on the Patriots is this guy Julian Edelman. And I mentioned yesterday that he was drafted in 2009 in the last draft, the 7th draft. Nobody wanted him because he was a short guy, not 5'10". He didn't even weigh 200 pounds. And when they took him in, he wasn't a good player. It took 4 years, 2013, till he broke out. And tonight, after the quarterback, he's the most valuable player in the Patriots. He's most probably going to score the most touchdowns and the most passes and the most runs. And it turns out that he was the most valuable player. Sometimes you don't see a person's potential. Sometimes you don't see your own potential. But if you get into the game, so to speak, and you start learning Torah, and you start doing mitzvahs, and you start coming to shul, and you start engaging in Torah observance and mitzvahs, you never know how far you can go.